So thank you so much for giving us your time and to share your thoughts and experience with us. I'm going to turn it over to Eli.
Joan is phenomenal. She was our board treasurer for many years, and she always asked me the tough questions. Thank you, Joan, for keeping me honest on the budget. What is this line for? Let me figure that one out. And I want to recognize our Metro board director, Jackie DuPont Walker. Good to see you. And we had some other fun folks who are around here as well. We have a couple council members, Dan Broadman from Glendale. I saw him just earlier. He's not in this room, but maybe in the other room. And council member Bubba Fish from Culver City as well. Anis Saraya wasn't able to join us. He got called away to an emergency meeting. But the good news was we got his boss, Supervisor Margaret, to talk about rebuilding, and we'll continue to talk about that here. All right, well, let's jump into this. As just a little, bit of my background too on this issue. We were coming up with ways. We as Move LA were really concerned that the investments that we were making in public transportation in LA County were displacing the very people who needed to ride the system. And we thought, well, geez, we need to ensure that not only do we have a stream of public funding for public transit, but we have a stream of public funding for affordable housing. And that's really where we started developing an idea for Measure ULA and also for Measure A. And interestingly enough, they were kind of like cousin ideas. We were kind of developing them at the time together, to kind of see what was going to happen with LACAHSA at the state level. And when LACAHSA actually at the last minute, it was like a last minute thing, almost didn't pass that one year. We pivoted to focus on Measure ULA, but we were still able to get LACAHSA done. We were still able to get Measure A passed. And I was one of the 5 proponents of when we started collecting signatures. Ariana was there. There's many people who helped us collect signatures for that ballot letter. And so here we are, and we're in this incredible opportunity because we have a local stream of funding to focus really here on what we do with that. And you look to other places in the state, like the Bay Area, they don't have that funding that we do. And so, I think we have a unique opportunity. And so really what this panel is about implementation. And I'm really excited and really honored that Mayor Richardson made time for us today, because not only is his city kicking ass in so many ways, and we met and we talked about that, just to tee this up, I was like thinking this morning, I woke up, I was like, this conference maybe we should have in Long Beach next year.
Yeah.
You got a convention center, right? Yeah, let's move it over. We are Move LA. Maybe we should move it on. Denny's like looking at me like, oh gosh. But we are Move LA. We should move this thing around. LA is a big county. All right, we'll see. We'll see how we can get it done. But he is also the chair of LACAHSA, which you heard about earlier. And I want to welcome him up to really, explain what that is, why Measure A is so vital, and why we approved it, and what you plan to do with that big that check. It's not a paycheck. Oh, and then and tell us all about it, sir. Thank you, sir. One last thing I like about this guy too.
The last thing.
That's the last thing. That's it. You don't get any more. We had a meeting it was like at the beginning. It was like end of August, early September. Both of us had our kids still hadn't gone back to school. And just one of them was hanging out with me, and it was like, bring your kid to work day. And not only did he also have his kids at work, but they ran my kid around his office picking up candy, which
it's a fact.
it was great. He had the best time. Like, I want to go to these meetings every time. I'm like, yeah, there's not always candy.
It doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't.
There's that window of time when the kids are out of summer school and school hasn't started yet. That is dad camp here at City Hall. Right, well, a busy day in the life of a mayor. Last night I was coming back from Sacramento, not for the reason you think. It wasn't really for advocacy. It was my kids' 4th grade trip. They go up to the Capitol and They come in and they learn about all these things they do not care about, especially fourth grade. This is the worst age. I love, as a mayor, when I talk to third graders, kindergartners, first graders, anything you say is great, right? Third graders just smart enough to ask good questions. But fourth graders care about nothing. We are in the Senate chamber, they're talking all these incredible issues from foster care, all of these things, and the fourth graders are completely unimpressed. So I gotta build my ego back up a little bit after getting knocked down this week by the fourth graders as chaperone. Well, today I was asked to come in and talk with you a little bit about housing and LACAHSA and the opportunity with Measure A. This is a huge opportunity, a transformation opportunity for us to expand affordable housing across Los Angeles County. I'll tell you this, when this conversation began for me way before I was mayor of the city of Long Beach. I see some SCAG folks, raise your hand. I saw Sarah over there, right? So this conversation started for me when I was in leadership on the SCAG board, Southern California Association of Governments. And we were going through and discussing our regional housing needs assessment. This is the process where you determine how much housing is needed currently and over the next 10 years of projected growth in order to ensure that there's enough housing for everyone in your 6-county SCAG region. And we were at that point dealing with a real housing crisis, and it was not easy with an 89-member board, something like that, across 6 counties, 191 cities, 19 million people. And I was in leadership at that time. We had to land this plane during the pandemic. How do you click forward, back? Push up or down? Push it down? Okay, great. I'm learning as I'm going. All right, so we're going through our regional housing needs assessment process, and we're understanding that we're in a real housing crisis. This was for the first time more housing need was assigned to our region than ever before. Right? There was 1.3 million units of housing needed to be built in order to just keep up with growth in the 6-county SCAG region. A major assignment. And I was a council member and vice mayor, and I spent a little bit of time on this very difficult board called AQD next to Vanessa Delgado. So my hands were full, right? Really full as we're looking at this real challenge, a major challenge facing all of our jurisdictions is how are we going to tackle this challenge? What's behind this challenge? Well, what you see take place is we saw over a period of time, and that shows decades there, over the decades, fewer and fewer affordable housing, that's what's on the left, fewer and fewer housing needed units have been built. And to the degree where between 2010 and 2019, we had built less housing units in LA County than any time in recent history. While at the same time, rents were increasing and wages did not keep up. It's a very simple case to make. So fewer affordable housing being built during that period of time, and wages aren't keeping pace with rent. And at the same time, we saw that some of our biggest tools for affordable housing production have been taken away, particularly in 2013. Actually, we can go back. During this period of time, in 2012, 2013, the state took our biggest tool for affordable housing away. It was redevelopment, where 20% of every redevelopment dollar that went to jurisdictions had to be spent on affordable housing production and preservation. Now, I know there's some housing developers in here, that it takes 5 years to get somebody into the unit, from site work and site acquisition to entitlements and CEQA, capital stacks and LIHTC rounds and all of that. 18 months of construction if the building trades are doing it. And then you got the lease up period. So you're talking 5 years. 2013, if you add 5 to 13, you get 2018. That's when the speaker and the legislature declared a housing crisis in California. 5 years after we took away our biggest tool to produce affordable housing in cities. So 1 + 1 = 2. This was a man-made, or at least man-accelerated crisis. So we're at LACAHSA now. We are at SCAG now, and we come up with our regional housing needs assessment. And a part of that was we needed to develop some tools to meet this challenge. And one concept that had come forward after talking with folks like United Way, Move LA, and others was to establish a housing finance agency in LA County as a model for what the rest of the 6 counties could develop. So 2021 was when we dramatically increased our RENA assignment. And in 2022, the legislature created LACAHSA, LA County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency. Now, it didn't pass on the first time around. It actually failed the first time around. And Long Beach was the only jurisdiction that endorsed it the first time around. The second time around, Long Beach has been at this table a long time. We need to move this and move Long Beach. Anyway, so we were the first jurisdiction to support it. SCAG had supported it, but there was still politics between the county and the cities about whether this should be the format or not. And so Sidney Kamlager and Tony Atkins did a lot at the end to push this across the finish line. Boom, 2022, LACAHSA authorized by the state of California. 2023, we began operation. We had no money. We had a board. I'd say it's the most inclusive board that you'll find of public agencies, where you have representation from big cities, small cities, regional representation, voices of subject matter experts. A very inclusive board was established. Our first board chair was Holly Mitchell, and I came in as a second board chair, and now I'm going for a second term as board chair to make sure we get through this work. But we had no money. It was mostly supported by philanthropy. CZI, Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, a number of foundations, SCAG supported, because everyone believed in the vision of having an agency dedicated, a metro for housing, right? Dedicated to affordable housing and solving problems in the region. And then we came together to figure out how we're going to fund this agency. It's a process that brought a lot of people together, and the community ultimately stepped up and circulated petitions. And Move LA stepped up, and our building trade stepped up, and the labor movement stepped up. And for the first time, we approved the very first citizen-driven initiative in LA County history at a moment where this wasn't a slam dunk. There were a lot of questions about whether we had the ability as a region to address this big challenge of housing under the backdrop of one of the worst periods of homelessness in our region's history. But the region stepped up, the community stepped up, circulated those petitions, and because of that, Measure A was adopted with 57, almost 58% of the vote across the county, and in Long Beach, 60%. Again, Long Beach, right? So now we're here. We're in a place where we can finally begin to think about addressing this housing crisis. We have dedicated resources for affordable housing production. About 36% of the measure, the overall measure is about $1.1 billion a year. And about 36% of that goes to affordable housing production, preservation, and tenant protection. Now, the majority of that goes out. It's funded to jurisdictions who have the ability to produce housing on their own. Some within the small jurisdictions have to work with their COGS and their land trust to produce it. And a portion of that money stays home with Long Beach to take on countywide priorities, to take on projects that may be too large for one jurisdiction to take on their own, and to be a thought leader and to move on some of these larger scale projects. And so we are in the process of establishing a 5-year plan for our agency that allows us to break out new tools. Here's one tool that exists in other places that we're contemplating in our 5-year plan. One innovative tool is LACAHSA social mortgage bonds. So within the social mortgage bond, this allows us to really think about simplifying capital stacks. Remember when I talked about it takes 5 years because you're going through different cycles of low-income tax credits and all these different capital stacks? This allows us to really simplify the capital stack to have only one or two sources. It allows us to reduce the cost of financing by 20 to 22%. That allows us to move forward and build with a union project labor agreement and still not blow up the cost of the project. We're talking cheaper, simpler capital, and time kills projects and time costs money. We're talking ease, speed, predictability on affordable housing finance. This is a tool that we're able to do as a large-scale agency to essentially create what will be the largest social impact fund for housing production in America because we've adopted Measure A. That's one opportunity we have. You also have your traditional housing finance models that we can do. We can intervene, we can bring large parcels together. We can envision social housing, just a minute on social housing. So I had an opportunity because everyone was telling me that I need to get to Vienna. Everyone says, okay, my councilwoman Tanu was saying, you need to get to Vienna, Mr. Mayor, right? And, I'm used to, Long Beach, we believe in housing. We have for a while, and we want to build it. We understand the values of building it. We want it to be simply affordable for the residents to live in. It's a simple set of values. But last month we did. We went out to Vienna and we looked at what was taking place. And what I saw was a city that's 1,000 years old. My city is 128 years, and I hear from all my constituents, we're completely built out, don't change a thing. You have a city that's more than 1,000 years old, is figuring out how to add density, increase housing, while maintaining open space, while making sure their communities are walkable and thriving, where 60%, 65% of the residents of that 2 million person city lives in some form of affordable housing. It's truly social. The constructs, the standards that we believe in, affordable housing has these stigmas, it's gone, right? You're not penalized if you end up being more successful and making a little bit of money. Now, if you want to buy a bigger house, you move further out of the city and you pay for that. But if you want to live in an area and do well, they don't penalize you for that. So this is an opportunity for us to really think big about the opportunities for social housing to change the paradigm on how we think about housing in LA County. This is one tool, but LACAHSA now we have a table where the county, where cities, where stakeholders are at one table talking about a new comprehensive vision for housing across the county with one-stop shop for financing. So here's what we've been up to. April and May, we've been hiring treasury services and figuring out our staff and staffing up. We got a staff of how many now, Connor? 11. When we started off, we didn't have any staff, so Connor basically was the executive director. Connor's my deputy mayor for housing and law. Right. And this month we saw a draft of our 5-year plan. Next month we will adopt our 5-year plan. We will sign our MOUs with our agencies, our partner agencies that will be funded, and we'll host the Housing Solutions Summit to begin to really talk about and take a deep dive into the opportunities on implementation. And then moving forward in July, we anticipate the first distribution from the county, and we begin to do work. We begin to fund jurisdictions and begin to implement this work. So that's where we are. What success looks like for us. 20,000 units accelerated in 5 years. We believe that is possible. If we simplify financing, we can accelerate 20,000 units. Within our mandate is a certain degree of prevention, not all homelessness prevention, but specifically tenant protections. And we're gonna intervene on evictions financially and provide legal support. So 10,000 evictions prevented. And we wanna make sure that we have one comprehensive vision, the technical support to where any jurisdiction, large or small across LA County, has no excuse. We will be there to help you with the technical support and contribute to one regional vision for housing production across LA County. So that's what LACAHSA is. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Wow. All right, we got some new folks in the room. Thank you for joining us. I see former council member Mike Bonin. Now the executive director of Pat Institute. Congratulations. And kind of in that vein, I was thinking, I really want to hear from, talking about we need more housing. Vanessa Delgado is also a former elected official, and currently an appointed elected official on the Air District Board, president of the board, in fact, or chair of the board, right? Technically, right? But you're also, your day job, and congratulations, by the way, when your kid graduated from USC. You made it here despite all the hullabaloo and craziness going on in USC. Thank you, I appreciate that. You're affordable housing developer. You're working on a project literally blocks away from here, in Boyle Heights and all around the region. What's it like being on the other side now? And what are your biggest pain points, and who do you collaborate with most, and kind of what gives you hope? This gives me hope, but what is giving you hope in how we address Angelino's, the pain points over affordability? And you can do it here, you can do it there, or...
Yeah, we can stay here. Okay, yeah. All right. right. Well, thank you, Eli, for asking me onto the panel. And yes, my daughter graduated from USC just a few hours ago. But I want to be here with you. And the reason I say that is because, one, I wanted to vent to somebody that I really can't get rid of her. Like, she's moving back. She's moving back in a few months. And I always thought that at 18 she was supposed to move out. But the reason I tell you that, and the reason I am here, is because it is completely unaffordable for my child to move out. And so I came to this panel to be here with you to talk about how to do things a little differently. And I would like my child to move out. But, you know, being an affordable housing developer, I really thought that I had a lot of opportunities in life and I wanted to give back to my community. And my uncle was homeless and I thought I need to do something about homelessness. And so our first project that my company did is in Boyle Heights, and it is a permanent supportive housing project. And you know, I was working out of my garage at this point with this kind of like hope that I could change somebody's world. It's 9 years now that we've been working on that project, and we are 87% done. Yeah, that doesn't work. You know, how many people have died on the street because in that time? And so it got me thinking a lot. And also, I want to tell you this part because I didn't really think it through before this project, but our project is 100% affordable for 30% of the area median income to 50%. So it's very, very affordable. And we have 2-bedroom units. It's meant for families. But the minute somebody makes more than that 50%, they can't stay. So I feel like I am putting my families in a lifetime of poverty. And that's not what the 9-year, entrepreneur in her garage was thinking, or 9 years ago. So I started thinking about other models, and why can't we do things differently? Because it's who I am, and it's, growing up with Rex in this little industry, it's like we have to do things differently, we have to try different things. And so what he's doing, his initiatives, sound just like what I'm trying to pitch to you all, which is that the fires give us an opportunity to explore things because it's an urgent time frame, like self-plan check. It takes so long to plan check a project. And some small jurisdictions, the small cities and the gateway cities, they don't have staff for that. So if we could implement that for affordable housing, it would take 9 months off the big projects. So that's, and we're trying that now. So if it works, why can't we do it on a larger scale? Affordable housing is a crisis situation too. And then I really would love anybody who is a decision maker to really think about home ownership for working families. Really, that's just something that I don't know why people just don't. There's no funding for it, nobody supports it, but I can build the same home that KB City Ventures Olson builds and get a $200,000 down payment for a family. And they can actually have a home and they pay for a 4-bedroom unit $2,500. So they can build wealth. And I want to build thousands of those. I know that sounds like, just as hopeful as I did 9 years ago about permanent supportive housing, but the amount of pushback that you get is pretty incredible because people are used to doing things a certain way. And why I'm excited about ventures like LACAHSA, if we could assign even 10% of the funding for home ownership, the difference of funding, I can build a home and sell it to somebody at 80% AMI. So that's like 120 to 150, depending on your county. And they get to build wealth. And the public agency generally pays about $200,000 as part of the contribution. Versus the permanent supportive housing that I'm building costs $900,000 per unit, per studio, plus the Section 8 voucher that it has every year. So I don't know why we keep doing things the same. I am here tired, but I would just challenge you that I don't know if it takes people like you, people like me. I am the only Latina owner of a development company in California. And I don't know if it takes people like me who are just tired and see things differently. I don't know what it is. But I just challenge you to consider things slightly differently, because there are a lot of ways we can do this so we can all get rid of our kids.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, but I say this from time to time again. I got 4 kids, and it's just a lot. It's too many, and it's too many. I jumped the shark on kids. No, I love them all, but they gotta move out. They gotta move out.
There's one kid in the audience.
Oh, hey! Yes, dads for embarrassing their kids. We love it. We love it. No, I think you're absolutely right. It's like, how do we address affordability? And this is really why I invited Shomari to be here on today's panel. And people might at first be like, what's going on here? Why are we talking about climate? And why are we talking about building decarbonization when we're talking about affordability? Well, 2 reasons. And Shomari comes from the electrician's world. He worked for many, many years for IBW Local 11, one of our awesome sponsors. And Antonio Sanchez is on our board, my vice president. But affordability is in multiple ways, right? It's not just the rent you pay, but it's also the utilities you pay. And if we are thinking about not only accelerating the development of affordable housing, but we're thinking about it as accelerated decarbonized buildings, then we're addressing our climate crisis at the same time, right? And we're accelerating our efforts to decarbonize our economy. And we're making it more affordable for folks to live, right? Because if they can be on renewable power or solar power or their own energy, then we're also making it more affordable for them. So I want to give Shomari the opportunity to kind of talk about that component of the housing conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Good afternoon, everybody. All right. My name is Shomari Davis, Senior Manager of Workforce Development for Building Decarbonization Coalition. I almost said IBW because I worked for 25 years for them. So yeah, that's kind of hard to get out. But it's so wonderful to be here and really talk about housing. I was very fortunate enough to work with Eli on Measure A and the Measure ULA as well, and with Joe Donlin. And we had a lot of success on that. But we also have to think and reimagine about things that we can do differently when we rebuild housing, right? How can we do it better? How can we do it more climate resilient? And how can we do it healthier so we can have healthier communities? A little aside, the LA fires really kind of personally affected me. I grew up in Altadena. I came from Northern California, grew up in Altadena. My mom, sold her home about 3-4 years ago to these really wonderful people in Altadena, and that house burned down. So I have 3 in-laws. Their house burned down to the ground. I have friends, house burned down. I used to go to church at Seventh-day Adventist Church in Altadena. 32 families lost their home. So, just really kind of thinking about how devastating that can be with leaving your home and coming back to nothing. I mean, everything's gone. So, it's something we have to think about. We also have to talk to folks about, maybe it's an opportunity to do something different, to do something better, to build better, right? To build all electric. It's something that we need to have folks think about, because I know everybody's thinking, electricity, wait a minute, doesn't electricity cost more than gas? Yes, but the way that we do it and the efficient way that we do it makes it even more affordable. So let's talk about that. So with Building Decarbonization Coalition, the coalition that I work with, we work with all the stakeholders, right? Everybody, we really try to holistically coalition everybody that is going to affect how we're going to get this done, right? Policymakers, contractors who are going to install it, original equipment manufacturers who build the equipment. And our goal is to cut emissions in buildings and in homes, right? We do this because we want to create safer, healthier, and more climate-resistant homes and communities. It's really important to us. But we know that people can rebuild all back electric, and we think that's the way to go. Well, why? Because we know that rebuilding LA and speeding up affordable housing, we know electric is the way to go because it's actually faster, it's cheaper to construct, and it's safer and healthier and more climate resilient. So, when you have a home that's already constructed, people take it like, there's a lot of people probably in certain communities, Altadena, that maybe haven't thought about electrifying because it's something that's kind of far out. Some of the things are something they haven't thought about, but we want to tell them, hey, you can actually build back cheaper and safer. If you build electric, it costs you $3,000 to $10,000 less to build than a mixed fuel home because you don't have to build all of the gas pipes. And if you know about construction, it's all about, as our developer said, 9 years is a long time to build something, but if you can build something faster, then you can get in it and it's definitely much more powerful. That's good. So these are some of the things, some of the appliances that we talk about that we really push with the manufacturers that are going to help people to be able to build all electric, more efficient. How many people like to cook? How many people like to eat? Yes, that's everybody. So we know that the kitchen in the home is really kind of a place where everything happens. I know it was in my home because I was always hungry, but that's where everybody comes, right? And so when you think about an induction stovetop, it's something that a lot of people haven't thought about, but when you think about how it actually works, how it can help you have cleaner air within your home, how it can actually make that cooking experience actually more enjoyable. Because if your mom or dad, whoever's in there cooking, they're sweating, right? In a gas fire, you got all the fire that it has to heat three things. That it heats the air, it has to heat the pot, and it also escapes. All the gas escapes into the room, and the problem is you're talking about breathing in bad air. So we want to make sure that the induction stove is just more efficient, it's cleaner, and there's no heat loss. It's really incredible. They have been around a long time, but they have really been innovating for years. So we look at an all-electric home, right? So I have one of our contractors. The name of his company is Electrify My Home, and him and his neighbor have built an all-electric home, and they talk about, oh, what did you save this year? What did you save this year? His neighbor paid $160 for the entire year for his utility bill. Now you think, wait a minute, isn't electricity very expensive? Well, how did he do that? If we look at this home, we're talking about solar. We're talking about solar and batteries, right? The solar panels are able to build, you save that in the battery, and then the most expensive power is from 4 to 9. You use that power to be able to save you money, right? You have battery storage, you have a heat pump. Anybody know what a heat pump is or have heard of heat pumps? And that's wonderful. So heat pumps are basically an air conditioning, it replaces a gas furnace air conditioner. But the difference is it's 3 to 5 times more efficient than an air furnace. And how does it do that? It moves air from one place to the next through compressing and expanding refrigerant. Now, I talked to one of our air conditioning contractors, and he said, on average, that homes, their efficiency of their gas furnace is 57%. Think about that. 57% is the average, and if you go to the highest it's going to go to, you might get 97%, right, of efficiency. Well, the difference is, with a heat pump, if you put in 1 kilowatt of power, you're gonna get 3 to 5 times of work out of that power, and that's how you save money on the efficiency of a heat pump. BDC is working with local coalitions, and they're working with Rebuild Safe to get $110 million California state funding incentive programs. And we are very interested in affordable housing, but we're also interested in building back safer. And it will give LA homeowners $10,000 to $15,000 if they build all electric. So we really want to get the word out to folks in Palisades and in Altadena that they can actually do this better. They can do it safer, they can do it more resilient, more affordable, and they can build it more climate resistant. It's really important that we let them reimagine what they can do and how they can build their home back better. So we have to support impacted communities, and we have to help them build back all electric and really make it even more cost effective than it already is. I think I should end it there. Are there any questions about heat pumps?
Well, I think we're gonna have Laura and Joe talk about Measure ULA, and then I think we're gonna open up to questions. And this is something new that I'm just learning about. We've got solar panels, we've got our electric car hooked up to it. But gosh, I still love taking my walk out and using my gas stove to make my walk. So if you can, okay, all right, we're gonna talk about that more. So we're talking about how do we address, because the wildfires were driven by climate and by the heat of the climate accelerating, and we have this opportunity to address housing. We have this opportunity to address climate. It wasn't just Altadena. We've talked a lot about Altadena. I didn't know about your family, but it's also the Palisades as well. And that's part of the city of Los Angeles. And as I was saying earlier, when we were kind of discussing, looking at the timeline that the mayor showed earlier about Measure A and when that kind of happened, we're at this inflection point over the summer of, I guess it was 2021, where we were kind of like developing the bones of a measure. There's Joan and Laura, and Joe is there. There's a couple other folks sitting in a room, sometimes for hours a week, like 10, 12 hours a week, developing what would eventually become Measure ULA, and in many cases, the same language was used for Measure A. And Vanessa, you mentioned too, this how do we get people into homes, and we were thinking a lot about that as well, and I'm hoping maybe you'll touch on that. But ULA was really our effort in 2022, really the first citizens initiative in the city of Los Angeles, where we said, we're not going to just do this the traditional way, 2/3 majority for a ballot measure like we did with Measure A and Measure R and Measure H and J. We're going to try to do a citizens initiative, and it took the power of workers, it took the power of organizing, it took the power of my team actually, the incredible folks who signed you in today, they led all of the volunteer efforts, did all the back end work so that, when you jump on a call, you know who to call and who to contact, or, when you're walking knocking on doors, you know what to do. So we were super involved in the volunteer driven effort. And so, I wanted to, we're 2 years into ULA. We're like a year or so ahead of Measure A. And where are we? Like, what is going on? How is the implementation going? Is it going well? Is it not going so well? What are the great things that we've done as a coalition, and where do we need to go from here, and how can we accelerate the housing conversation? So, Joe, can you answer that question?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
Should I grab the clicker?
Yeah, if you want it.
I know, it's a little tricky. Thanks.
Yeah.
Before my time starts, Eli, I just want to mention a couple things. On the Altadena tip, just want to give a shout out to the All Together Coalition, and there's a report that Sage and others just released recently, if you haven't checked it out, just on the pre-fire displacement risks that were at play that are now compounded by the fires, and the risks of speculation and so forth. So I just want to shout that out. The other point I want to make, Mayor Richardson's description of fourth graders. I've been a fourth grader myself. Spot on. So well done. So hey everyone, Joe Donlin with the United House LA Coalition. I so appreciate being a part of today's conversation. As Eli just described, Move LA has been crucial to the coalition's history and our successes, dating back to that first convening that took place at Unite Here's offices that Denny and Eli and others brought together to make Measure ULA, get it off the ground. I'd like to say a quick word about the movement history that led to all of this. Really, our coalition has its origins in LA's powerful movements of community organizing, renters' rights, workers' rights, labor, affordable housing. And back in 2016, these movements came together under the banner, I heard this phrase from Shomari just a moment ago, of Build Better LA was the name of the coalition, to pass Measure JJJ in the city of LA that is now responsible for the creation of over 8,000 affordable units in the city. Our coalition has huge overlap with a sister coalition, our Future LA, that created the vision for LACAHSA and its enabling legislation in SB 679, and of course its first revenue measure, Measure A. So I say this as context to what the grand vision is for United the House LA. We are working towards a Los Angeles that is healthy and affordable to the workers and tenants and unhoused family and neighbors. When we center our low-income communities and communities of color, we will have a robust economy where the majority can then afford to have some disposable income to invest back into our local communities. There we go. So let's talk about Measure ULA. Passed by an overwhelming majority of voters in the city of LA in 2022, it taxes the transactions of high-valued property sales, over $5 million. It raises hundreds of millions of dollars each year to fund these core areas of investment you see on the screen. Building and preserving affordable housing, including social housing, protecting tenants from displacement and homelessness, supporting vulnerable tenants with financial assistance, expanding homeownership to Vanessa's point made earlier. There's a new homeownership program that ULA is funding, and creating good union jobs, including in the public sector and construction sectors. ULA has already proven to be a game changer for LA. It's providing about 80% of the city's funding for affordable housing, more than 90% of the city's funding for homelessness prevention and renter protections, in the light of our city and state's fiscal crisis augmented by the Trump administration's massive cutbacks. These locally sourced dollars put Los Angeles in a much more secure place than most other places in the country. So this is a key point. The local funding sources that we can generate make our cities more resilient in the face of these crises. So how have the revenues been in ULA's first 2 years? Well, this chart tells a pretty good story. From its first quarter through the last quarter of last year, 2024, there was a steady upward trend to the point our biggest month of revenue reported, and it was reported in January, but the transactions were in December, totaled $54 million in a single month. Of course, wildfires and tariffs may cause disruptions to this trend in the short term, but we expect this trend to continue to be strong going forward. And I'll point out that this data is contrary to what you may hear in the media about real estate transactions being held back. Clearly, the market has baked in the cost of the new tax and is moving forward as usual, as actually numerous industry actors have said publicly. They're more of the quiet voices that you don't hear as much in the media, but they're out there. Now let's talk about some of the early outcomes of ULA. First, I'll say that we're just getting started. The numbers on the screen are only from a relatively tiny amount of funding that was enabled in the first year of implementation. The delay tactics by big real estate opposition, such as tax avoidance, litigation, and the like, have had an impact on implementation, but I think you'll agree that already we've made some impact. But later this year, another $316 million will be going out for new affordable housing production and preservation, including $100 million for a new social housing program. That's $300 million of affordable housing built by union labor under a project labor agreement. As we speak, hundreds of low-income seniors and people with disabilities have begun receiving income support, stabilizing some of our most vulnerable households thanks to ULA. And yet we're still just getting started. In its first year, see this on the screen, ULA has kept 11,000 people housed, prevented from falling into homelessness thanks to the ULA's rental assistance program. 795 affordable homes have been accelerated thanks to the early dollars that ULA put out. When those are built, we estimate thousands of union construction jobs will have been responsible for building all those units. Over 110,000 Angelinos have received tenant education on their rights, and in many cases, eviction defense services, preventing both self-evictions and formal evictions. Indeed, thanks to ULA, the City of Los Angeles will soon kick off its first ever right to counsel. That's a right to an attorney for low-income tenants facing an eviction. That would not be possible without ULA money. I'll end on this slide, which showcases just a few people who have more secure housing and better jobs thanks to ULA's investments. And again, we're just getting started. Phoebe here is now living in affordable housing for the first time thanks to ULA, after years of being unhoused and bouncing in and out of the homeless services system. Viana could keep her housing thanks to the rental assistance and eviction defense services paid for by ULA. And Tanya's story is amazing. She's an IBEW electrician who's formerly unhoused, a former tenant of affordable housing, and is now a homeowner helping to build affordable housing in her very own community. Yeah. These outcomes are why we do this, and why we must see through the hate and opposition that has been thrown at ULA by those you'd expect it from. The luxury realtors from selling Sunset, and the big real estate developers looking to maximize their profits at the expense of the city's affordable housing goals. I'm going to wade into a little controversy here if you're all right with that. After filing 3 lawsuits using creative tactics to try to avoid paying the tax and other delay attempts, they are now using research from the Lewis Center to renew their attempts to weaken ULA. That research has grabbed headlines, and I honestly, genuinely appreciate their desire to advance good housing policy, but it's being used in this way. And I can tell you that there are serious questions about methodology and assumptions in those reports that are getting lots of attention. I can tell you about data not used, tiny sample sizes, but we should also think about this logically. ULA is only 2 years old, and the period it's been around could quite likely be the most irregular period for decades to come. We just came out of COVID lockdowns that sent the office real estate market tumbling. And you have the tax avoidance behavior in ULA's first year that you'd expect from something like a transfer tax. So let's give ULA time to breathe. We're just getting started. And let's remember these outcomes and remember what ULA does. At an unprecedented level, it is strengthening the resources available for affordable housing development and homelessness prevention. Another dynamic not discussed much is the fact that it helps level the playing field for nonprofits to be more competitive in LA's cutthroat real estate market. I should say nonprofits, community land trusts, and other partners. Now there's room for all sorts of developers.
Nonprofit developer in the audience there.
There's room for all sorts of developers and development in the city of LA, but this dynamic that ULA helps create should be seen as an added benefit because nonprofits are the developers who are most concerned with and are required by their missions to take care of the average person and to build healthy communities in the process. And for all these reasons, that's why we say, thank you, LA.
Laura, you guys are the tag team, right? So Laura, you got introduced earlier. So do you want to just take it? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name's Laura Raymond, and it's great to be here. Thanks to Move LA for pulling us together and for having me. So I wanted to talk a bit about, this panel is about implementation. I wanted to talk about some of the choices we made in drafting and how they've been really critical for ULA implementation. And just a bit of background. So before I started my own consulting company, I was executive director of ACT LA for 10 years, and in that position, I had Denny Zane calling me for many, it felt like years, talking about like, we need to do a tax for housing, and he was right. And so I had the opportunity to be on the drafting committee for ULA. And in that space, we were really, I mean, it was truly a grassroots effort. This, both ULA and Measure A are really examples of civil society taking the lead in crafting solutions. And so there was a lot of hard work of coalition building and consensus building, and that work is so hard because there was many, I mean, we had coalitions coming together at the table, like multiple coalitions representing really dozens and dozens of organizations, and herding cats, getting people to agree. It was really hard work, but I think it ended up resulting in policy that truly reflected needs and expertise on the ground. It really did take wisdom from all these coalition spaces that had for years been thinking, what do we need to actually solve for tenant protections? What do we need to actually solve for our affordable housing crisis? And putting them down on paper in ULA. And so, for example, ACT LA at the time, we were just coming out of helping lead Healthy LA, which was a big coalition responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, and had, as part of that coalition, had helped come up with a budget proposal to both the city and county on how the federal dollars that the city and county were getting for COVID should be spent on housing. And we spent a lot of time in coalition spaces hammering out, like, we need this X amount of money for affordable housing, we need X amount of money for preservation, and just getting all that together. And so when the opportunity to do ULA came together, all of those like really years of work in these coalition spaces and organization spaces to think through needs. We had the Right to Counsel at the table, who had been thinking about, like, we need this amount of money to actually do a right to counsel for tenants in the city of LA. And so all of that kind of came together in the drafting committee of ULA, and we were able to really craft this to respond to like expertise on the ground and people in the field. And I really think that's important to emphasize how wise it is to put practitioners in the driving seat, because for the most part, this policy was not written based on politics and kind of different politicians' needs. It was really focused on the outcomes that we want the policy to have, and we were able to, in Measure ULA, lead with outcomes and the goals of the measure, and those are written into the policy. Like, ULA is going to result in X, Y, and Z, and now the measure is accountable to those. And so I wanted to turn to kind of two ways I think now that's showing up in implementation. One is that we put the expenditure plan of Measure ULA in the actual measure itself. So this was not a tax that went into the general fund. It's a special tax where all the dollars are earmarked for certain uses. So a certain percentage, for example, has to go to affordable housing preservation. A certain percentage has to go to the social housing program. A certain percentage has to go to income support for seniors and people with disabilities. And I think that can be a little bit controversial, because when we launched this, some folks in leadership, some elected leaders, for example, were like, we don't want our hands tied, but I think the way that it has played out in implementation is we've been able to design these programs with like very long-term time horizons in mind. So knowing that these dollars are committed to these programs forever, it's completely different than if this was like a one-year allocation, right? So that's been really actually, I think, very important in the implementation, that we have this kind of ongoing commitment through this expenditure plan. We have 11 program areas set in the measure that both are divided between tenant protections and affordable housing. And then the affordable housing program has set money for preservation, and then set money for new construction, and then set money for social housing. So we're going to be able to kind of diversify our approach here, and also have that money, as I said, guaranteed year after year. The other part that I think in the drafting, because this was so led by civil society and groups on the ground, we were concerned about the money like actually going towards these programs and kind of the integrity of the programs over time. And so we set up through the measure, it's in the measure, ballot measure language, it required the establishment of the Citizens Oversight Committee. And the Citizens Oversight Committee, we gave a lot of power in the measure. It's not kind of just this committee that's giving recommendations, so it actually controls a lot of the budget and we wrote the program guidelines. I'm on the Citizens Oversight Committee, so I said we wrote the program guidelines along in very deep partnership with advocates and of course with the housing department, but it was a real partnership. I mean, we were, I can't even count the number of hours we spent together with the housing department in those meetings, and I think it made the actual program guidelines very rich because we had advocates at the table, like really drafting these, and that we all felt very accountable to folks on the ground doing the work, so making sure the programs are going to work. The Citizens Oversight Committee also has an Inspector General, which currently is Estolano Advisors, and so our Inspector General works for the COC. It's like accountable to us as a Citizens Oversight Committee, and we also have the power to do audits. We have the power to, every 3 years, we do evaluations of all the programs and making we actually, in the ballot measure, it requires us to make sure that the evaluation is meeting all these goals that are set forth in the measure. So there's a lot of accountability in there that I don't think is, it's unique. I think it's very strong. And so that has been, I think, just a very kind of untold story of ULA is how we've been able to set up this oversight. But I also wanted to talk a bit about, since we're talking about implementation, just note that I really think implementation is not just policy work. And we have to, once we're doing it, this is both for ULA and Measure A, think about, through implementation, how we're continuing to bring voters along and really continuing to speak to the general public. I think that's just as an important part of the implementation as the policy work. And so as kind of practitioners in the field, I think we really need to be thinking about how we are both collecting stories. I mean, Joe showed powerful stories of people who've received these services, but also how we, what channels we're using, and not just speak to each other about this, but really be buying media, buying digital ads, and being back in campaign mode, so that we're actually reaching people. Because I think a big threat to our success here is if we start losing voters, and it's very easy to do. As folks that have worked on ballot measures like this in the past, I mean, we saw what happened with Measure HHH, where actually HHH over-delivered in what it had promised to voters, but the narrative in the media was very negative, right? And so as we were campaigning for Measure ULA, and I was a spokesperson for that campaign and was talking to the media all the time and talking to voters at the doors as well, the biggest question we got was about HHH and the failure of HHH, and so we lost the narrative on that, and I think there's a real danger in that happening again with ULA and Measure A, because we go, as advocates, we go into policy mode after we win and are in the details, which is important, but we don't do that campaign work to voters, which is critical. And so I really do think we need to start investing more in public education about affordable housing. There's so much misconception out there. This week we had that article about low income being over $100,000 for some cities in California, and I was like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my God, the next time we're at the door, it's this is what everyone's, even though that's not City of LA, it's that's what everyone's gonna be talking about, right? It's just this cynicism that brews about affordable housing. And so we need to be out there right now talking about what affordable housing is, why it's so important, sharing the stories of people who are moving into these units, and making sure we're making LA proud of passing Measure ULA and passing Measure A. I think we're at a moment where LA is positioned to really lead the nation out of the housing crisis. I don't say that lightly, but I really do think that, we look at what's happening in LA, it's such a massive opportunity. And now that we've passed ULA, and I'm sure, Joe, you're having conversations like this as well, like people from cities around the country are calling about like how we did it and how they could do it in their city. And where, people are jealous of like the revenue that we've been able to raise here. And I think that given the national tenor and what's happening budget-wise across the country, we are in a position to show what progressive policy can do here, because that's progressive housing policy, and chart a course forward for the whole country. And so I think part of that is communications. We really do need to invest in that. So I'll end there, but again, thank you for having me.
Awesome. And we have about 20 minutes or so left, and I want to let if folks have a question from the audience. But that was a great quote that you had about sort of us leading the nation. So if you are in social media, tag us at Move LA Transit on LinkedIn. We're on TikTok too. Olga's running around if you want to do an interview. Hey, there's Olga's right there in the back if you want to do an interview with her for TikTok or Instagram. This idea that you just brought up was really interesting, Laura, and I really wanted to focus on it because I've been listening to Ezra Klein a lot, reading Abundance right now. I've been, when Metro, there was 7 years between when the Expo line opened and the K line opened. That were 7 years in between those two rail line opening, and there were things that happened in between. But I said to folks at Metro, I was like, you gotta, even if it's just opening up a station every year, you need to show to voters that your money is going to work, right? That you're seeing these changes, and they're about to open up the LAX station, almost $1 billion project, but it's one more line on the K line that's going to continue to expand. But I look at this chart, right, that Mayor Richardson that you put up about what happened in the 90s, right? Like, when did we go from this build to this massive decline? And I really, I worry that in a state like California, where we want to do everything, we want to electrify, and we want to have citizens involved, and we want to make sure that, that everything, everything is done. Are we also just tripping ourselves up in terms of the implementation? And for us, me and you, Rex, with fourth graders, like, how do we ensure that in 8 years, when our kids hopefully move out of the house, there's actual housing for them? And so what do we need to do to just move the implementation faster? And I look to you as a leader in as a city, but I look to everyone on this panel, like, what can we do to just move this pace quicker and get out of the way and get it done?
Well, check. All right. Well, I think we just have to do it. To win is to choose. You can't do it all. Make a decision and stick to it and do it well. If we pick every initiative and every effort as a priority, if everything's a priority, then nothing is a priority. So to win is to choose. In Long Beach, we chose housing. We did it a decade ago. When our downtown, prior to the pandemic and all of that, we thought about our downtown. We made a decision to create a downtown plan, to set a goal to build 5,000 units, to do a program EIR, to where if you build it the way that we want it, then you get to opt into the program EIR, and it saves time. Time makes or breaks projects. And so the goal was 5,000 units. And we, in that same time frame, built 6,500 units in that space. Now we're doing it across the whole city, where we're updating our land use to build more housing, 26,000 units across the city. We're updating our land use for other goals now as well. We adopted what's called a Globe Master Specific Plan, all the areas that used to be McDonnell Douglas Boeing, to create an easier process to bring advanced manufacturing and neo-industrial, and that's how we became the fastest growing space cluster in America. We called it out. Now that's called Space Beach, where you've got building rockets with rocket labs, and relativity space with 3D printed rockets, and VAST is building the world's first commercial space station. That'll be the first one to launch Q1 or Q2 of next year. All that is because you pick. If you pick every industry, you pick no industries, right? So we're fortunate that we focused on housing our downtown. We didn't anticipate a pandemic was going to take place. but it did. And office space is at a fraction of what it was before. Folks are, we didn't anticipate, Uber and Postmates and all of those things that's changing the downtown environment, but because we invested in housing, our downtown's making a strong comeback, and we need to now double down on that. All the cities in California, all the big cities are evaluating, like, what do we bet on for our downtown? And I'll tell you, it's housing, it's a 24-hour economy, it's experiences, it's entertainment. That it's no longer going to be mostly centered on office space. If you're still focused on that, you're building a downtown for 50 years ago, not a downtown for the future. And so that's what we're doing. We're bringing in a 12,000 seat amphitheater near the Queen Mary, the Long Beach Amphitheater, building it all union. It'll be open by next season. That's 12,000 more people, 40 to 50 nights a week that will be in our downtown. Right? So it's just about thinking about what are the things that activate your space. It's housing. The other thing I say about moving fast, if Long Beach has an affordable housing ombudsman. We believe in ease, speed, and predictability. We're doing 60 to 90-day approvals. We've been doing this for a number of years. 60 to 90-day approvals are 100% affordable. But navigating your city, making sure you have the same person when you have revisions and updates to a plan, all of that matters. And all the developers chatter. And if they had a good experience or a bad experience, that could influence whether investment sits on the sidelines or gets off the fence and invests in your city. So ease, speed, predictability, and to win is to choose.
Just add something. So, I was really inspired to hear Joe talk about how much funding had been collected. But I have to tell you, I'm thinking about laying off staff. We have a small staff. There's only 5 of us, and it is so hard right now. And to hear that there is all that money makes me feel like, God, we are struggling right now. Because I know the headlines aren't all real, but I teach this intro to real estate development class, and I ask my students to go to a hearing of a housing project of more than 4 units. And that they had to go in person. And not one student of the 32 could find a hearing. And I extended it to Long Beach, all the gateway cities, LA. That's dramatically different. Something is off. And if there was a way to, even if it's through foundations, but to deploy that money faster, we're really suffering right now in the real estate industry. I pay 12% interest rates. Every day costs money. And, I pay myself $60,000. I qualify for my affordable housing. But I love this. I don't know, but I don't know who else is crazy enough to keep at it.
And I just wanted to add to we know that if we want to incentivize folks and really help lower to middle income folks to be able to have clean air and have electrification, that, we have to do it through legislation. There's a couple of bills that Building Decarbonization co-authored. One is Bill SB 282. We want to streamline permitting to make it go faster and also to be able to regulate costs of permits, because sometimes costs of permits, it varies, and that's going to definitely be an obstacle for folks to be able to get that down. But we don't want to do that and sacrifice safety. We want to make sure we uphold the building codes and make sure that public safety and health is tantamount to what we're doing. We also have a bill that actually went through called SB 1221, where we want to do neighborhood scale. So we want to pick a whole neighborhood where we go to each homeowner or renter and then talk to their landlord and see if they want to electrify their home. And this bill, it's going to be 30 pilots through the state of California, the utility driven, and we're going to electrify an entire neighborhood. That way, if we get over 60% of the folks, nobody's left behind to pay the high cost bills, because if you have to run gas, and they're going to be paying higher because they're the only one in there that are going to be paying the gas. So we want to do it by neighborhood, and we want to make sure that these careers are high road careers, high road jobs that have wages and benefits with skilled labor, because we understand it's important that the people that build this have to be able to sustain themselves and be able to afford to be able to live in California. So it's very important. We have this website called The Switch Is On, where we partner contractors with people that are trying to electrify, and those contractors are there to help with, we have the Tech, Clean, and Hero rebates. Luckily, we still have money that's left over for that. It's $4,000 and $8,000 that you're given if you go and install a heat pump, and it's income driven. So we definitely want to make sure that we connect the dots for everybody to make sure that the contractor goes with the homeowner, and then we also want to make sure that we tell folks, right, and understand why this technology is good for you, why it's good that you can have an opportunity to have clean air in your home. So it's really important to us.
Well, let's take some audience questions. We've got about 10 minutes. Promise to get folks out on time. I saw a question from the gentleman in the back. Maybe let's take, okay, yeah, go for it. And then let's take two at a time. So Director DuPont-Walker, I saw your hand up as well. Go for it.
Okay. My name's Dave Ford. I work here.
Check.
Okay.
What about
Thank you. My name's Dave Ford. I work for Southern California Edison. And, you know, I was listening about the housing crisis and the challenges with housing affordability. One thing that I've observed is the waste deficit in minority communities. I attended this past year the State of Black LA workshop or event with that Urban League put on, and there is a clear disparity in wage gaps in median household incomes across the board when it compared African Americans to other groups. There's and then when you look at energy efficiency and cost of energy in low-income housing, it's roughly around, on an annual cost for low-income housing, because they don't have energy efficiencies, it's averaging about $200 to $300 more on a monthly basis. And with those wage gap disparities, that group has a lot lower economic factor in their contributions of having the same American experience as others.
I don't know if that, was there a question there or just?
The question is how are we going to address that?
Oh, okay. And Director, let's get Director DuPont-Walker's question as well, and we can answer them together.
Thank you, and while I am proud and humble to serve as a director of LA Metro, what I do for a living is community and faith-based development. And when I went to the board, my charge was to create the nexus between, or recognize the nexus between transportation and affordable housing. I want to thank you, Eli, for this rich panel. The format is wonderful. But starting with CAHSA, ULA, and all of the others, I think you have a Zoom where we can actually ask our questions afterwards of all the panelists, because there's so much we need to know and the rich information, so hopefully you can follow. When I came into the business, affordable housing included all of us. The definition of affordable housing is that no one should spend more than 1/3 of their income for housing. Somewhere along the way, we redefined it so it was them and us. I think we must go back to that notion of affordable housing, that everyone sees a place for them in the equation. The cost of living in LA is absolutely difficult for most of us. But if we put all of our thoughts to the table with the local dollars and the dollars that will come in, and we look at those efficiencies, we can make a difference. I hope that from this panel, because what you all have in common is tenacity and persistence and vision. And that's what we need. So on behalf of the mission-driven developers, we want you to really bring us to the table, because we are now a dying breed since there's money in doing affordable housing. And it's important for it not just to be about the production of the housing, but the quality of life for the families and the quality of life in the communities. And that's what we were missing, and that's what you have as a vision, that's what we have as a vision. So hopefully we can continue this dialogue with action in place. And just one question, Mr. Mayor, do you have meetings that are open that we can all come and be a part of the dialogue?
Well, that's an easy one. It's a public agency. Everything is Brown Act. We don't have our own building or anything like that. We are lean and mean. We normally meet at the Metropolitan Water District. We meet once a month. This month we ended up actually at Metro. We were at Metro where were we this one? I was virtual. We were at the county this time because I was in Sacramento on the 4th grade trip using the child care exclusion for virtual meetings. It was literal child care. But yeah, it's a public meeting. We accept a lot of public comment, and the 5-year plan, I think, is available for public comment, and we look forward to adopting it next month.
And, I mean, if anyone else wanted to kind of lean into that, but what I'm hearing, like, from you, Vanessa, from you, Jackie, is like, we have to we have to uplift small, minority, women-led developers. And we have to ensure that these dollars, these hundreds of millions of dollars, are not being are ensuring you can keep your staff on, and are ensuring that we can build the housing and not let the takeover of our country happen here in Los Angeles with massive corporations who are really just focused on profit. And I know we developed Measure A and ULA to sort of prevent that, but I worry about the dollar signs pushing out good folks like you, Vanessa, and Jackie on that. I saw we had 2 other questions. I remember. I think the other person left. So let's do. We got a few questions. I want to keep time though. The gentleman here, and then I want to get one over this side because I didn't want to ignore this side. And then maybe we have a few more minutes. I don't know.
My name is Sam Samano.
Please, question. Quick.
Sure. Earlier example, the cost of the electric bill for the whole year, $160, based on the photovoltaic and the batteries. Question is how the consumer pay for it. In other words, what's the cost of the photovoltaic and the batteries to be in $160 annually?
You're talking about for the hot new homes. So we're working with Rebuild LA Safe on a build right now, actually, with Assemblyman Tina McKenna and Marilena Durazo, to try to get $10,000 to $15,000 for homeowners that are going electric. The bill is about $110 million. It's being done right now to try to help folks to be able to incentivize and to be able to do it. You are correct. It is costly. There's also some incentives and rebates that the state has that it's timely. We just got it was frozen because of all of the confusion from the federal government trying to hold money at the beginning of the year. $45 million we got back. It's back on track, and that's for the heat pumps installation, and then for panel upgrades too. If you go to the Switches On website and look for a contractor in your area, and then the contractor will have some information on how to get some of those rebates. But yes, it is something that we are constantly working on, more legislation to be able to help people afford these systems because we understand how important they are. So it's a very good question.
Hi, this is Belen with Ms. Rikian from San Diego. I really appreciated the overview of how LACAHSA happened. I'm working with a group who would like to start an affordable housing agency in San Diego. If other cities want to replicate what you did, what's the best way to take a deeper look at how you made it happen?
So I would start with Sandag, right? Your regional planning agency, bring them on as a partner. You can talk with us at LACAHSA. There's also BAFA, the Bay Area Finance Authority. So you can use us as models. But I would start with your regional planning agency,
Thank you.
with SANDAG.
And then do you have a toolkit, how you're keeping track of everything you learned throughout the process? Is it anywhere or somebody
It's all
on
up
your team?
here. No, I'm joking. We've been so focused on getting up, like we're barely up. We just hired an interim CEO and some initial staff. But I think the reason I say go back to your planning agency is these agencies are supposed to think long term about where we should move our region to. SCAG is thinking about scaling across six counties. If this is successful, you're one county, right? That's why tapping over the planning agency, that's who's responsible for long-range planning of transportation, housing, sustainability. And that would be a good starting point for you. But we're obviously there for advice for you as we develop.
Go for it. Joe, you want to jump in?
Yeah, real quick on that last question, I'd also say reaching out to the Our Future LA coalition in terms of the organizing and the building of the coalition that really is necessary to pass something like an SB 679 or a Measure A is crucial to the equation. Without that, it's really hard to do something at that scale. I did want to, respond. I really appreciate Vanessa, your point earlier, and Ms. DuPont Walker's point as well. The dollars are not moving fast enough. The bureaucracy is real. There's a 13-month timeline from beginning to end around a NOFA process, Notice of Funding Availability for ULA dollars right now. And the Citizens Oversight Committee that Laura's a part of, said, let's cut that down by 6 months. This is, there's no reason we should be waiting that long to get these dollars moving. And so the importance of coalitions, Laura mentioned it earlier, civil society pushing in campaign mode after we make the win is really important. We need everyone involved to make sure that we're seeing these dollars move as quickly, as effectively as possible, and that's the role of the Citizens Oversight Committee. And we need as many community partners and groups involved, and that's what the United House LA Coalition continues to do. But the more that we can get involved and the more developers who are at the table to really push is going to be really important.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one way that we really try to safeguard against kind of more corporate affordable housing developers is like you write it into the initiative. Like a goal of the measure is really kind of incubating smaller nonprofit developers in the guidelines. We also have a lot of language around that. So you can, both through the drafting and implementation process, you can actually safeguard against things like that. And I think that's super, super important.
I'm gonna add one more reference for the San Diego question. You have an awesome resident who was behind the scenes on a lot of this, who lives out there. You should connect with Jennifer Lassar. Yeah, Jennifer Lassar is someone you should definitely connect with, who has all of our relationships.
And I would also say connect with Laura. She's a fantastic consultant and can help. I know you're not gonna say it because you're humble, but Laura, you rock. And and you're helping folks around the state pass ballot measures. And so talk to Laura about organizing. And I would just say one last thing. Jackie, Rex, Vanessa, you guys know Mayor Bass. We're about to be in a situation where they're going to cut a bunch of planning staff and housing staff. And we're just going to be sitting on this money. And you look at your example, Rex, 69 days. We're going to give you an expediter who's the same person. Like, that's a model. And it's not like it's across the country. It's right here. So I don't know what it is, but we can't sit on this money in the city of LA. I hate to call out the city of LA, but we got to. We've got to move this money. We've got to build more affordable housing. We've got to move the money at Measure A. You guys are lean and mean. You're moving it quickly. We just have to push this money out because voters expect it. So that would be my message. Thank you all for joining this panel. We have a short break, about 10 minutes.